as educationalists, why do you think that the Festival of Education would be important to you and be important to you to further your practice and your knowledge of the practice?
I think the important thing for teachers is to make sure they carry on engaging with the craft that they need to specialise in. And trying to do that's difficult. Teachers are always pressed for time, and you always want to make contact with other teachers and have great discussions. And what we try to do with the festival is bring together people who are so diverse and so important in one place, so that you can have those conversations. You can meet people who are absolute experts, who are bloggers or writers or policymakers, and just anything to do with education that's up for debate. We have it here. So we do think it is the two best days you can come to in the UK for professional development, and people go home feeling really energised about what they do, and I think it injects a lot of pride back into the teaching profession as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I came to the festival 5 years ago for the first time, and the thing that was striking to me was that I was exposed to arguments that I'd never heard before. So when you train as a teacher, you have this sort of whistle-stop tour, teacher training year. You then join a school, and there's a conversation that's happening. And I remember coming to the festival and really being challenged by speakers and things that I'd heard that sort of made me think a lot about what I was doing. My view of the festival is that it's a sort of national platform for debate about education. I think that's what it needs to be. That's the most important function it can have. And then after that, as Robin says, in terms of professional development, it's kind of distilled exposure to the kind of best and brightest ideas that are happening in education at the minute.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think also education has been dogged by some really vacuous ideas over the years, where somebody's just decided that it's a magnificent idea to write all history essays out of potatoes or something like that, and to get sensible research and dialogue and debate about what really works out there in front of teachers, and to stimulate the kind of conversations and to challenge the sort of thinking that we've just heard about. I think it's really important. And I think I'd also add that I feel like we're in an incredibly privileged position here, that we have the facilities and the space to facilitate the debate. We don't own all the knowledge. We're definitely not the experts on everything, but we can facilitate the sharing of those ideas. And I think there's a real responsibility to use that privileged position for something good. And I think that's happened over the last 8 years.
Yeah.
There's a strange thing at the festival where you get this sort of important people in education, people that you wouldn't have heard of, but in education are sort of big people, and they'll come to the festival and they'll talk and they'll kind of rub shoulders with a classroom teacher who's maybe been teaching for a few months, and they'll get to sit and listen to people who have directly made the policies that have influenced what they're doing and what they're teaching, and that can be ministers of education, it can be academics, it can be writers, and so on and so forth. So there's a democratizing element to the festival. And I think you often see, I think when people come to the festival, they often say, they kind of stagger out the gates at sort of 5 and 6 on the Friday, trying to collate and make sense of everything they've heard. And a lot of people, I think, when they come to the festival, they say, "Oh, I don't know what to think now. I'm more confused," and that's what I think is brilliant about it, because it just gives you more questions. It gives you more things to think about and reflect upon what you're doing, and that's what good professional development isn't really about telling people what to do. It's about creating a culture where people reflect on their practice.
The two big things that happen here are people connect and they converse. They come and they meet new people, and then they carry on the conversations here, and those conversations go back to schools, or they're happening on Twitter, or they're going into blogs, and it's brilliant. It rolls the whole year round, and then we just start all over again. So it has brought, I think, policy making and education back towards a teaching fold, really. It's kind of grabbing it away from governments and think tanks and putting it back in empowering teachers, which is a brilliant thing to do.
Yeah. I think that's been reflected internally at Wellington, where the nature of the conversations that happen in the staff room are have changed massively in the time. I've been here 24 years now, and in the first 12 years, if you weren't interested in what the latest rugby score was, you had no conversation in common room. There was nothing to talk about. And now, the huge amount of the chatting in the staff room is about that. It's about the things that are important in education and people talking about their craft and sharing ideas. I think it's changed Wellington a lot, the festival.
You also get, in every sort of education event, so in education, when you have large gatherings of people, they're usually exam boards doing CPD. They're often thematically based around research or in a particular ideology or approach. The thing that's genuinely unique about the festival here is you actually get people from completely polar opposite sides of the debate, and very often on the same stage. And that sort of dialectic is, I think, the most important thing. It wouldn't really be successful if it was just people hammering home the same message without question. And some of the most interesting discussions and things. I'll give you an example. The most influential piece of research in education is called Assessment for Learning. It's nearly 20 years old, 1998. It's impossible to think of a school that isn't using this in some form or another. It's written by a guy called Dylan William. He kind of speaks at the festival every year, and I remember coming here about 3-4 years ago, and we've also seen this rise against that in education of people who are just teachers writing blogs and just commenting on social media and kind of finding a voice. And I remember seeing a blogger who'd written some things questioning this idea, and there was a debate on the stage. It wasn't a debate, it was a discussion with Dylan and this guy. He was just a normal classroom teacher. And I remember thinking, God, something's really happening here, because he was asking questions about, look, we don't understand why this is, that doesn't make sense in our practice, and so on and so forth. And this, important person, Dylan, said, well, actually, my view is that my theory has been misused in a lot of ways. And then it led to more conversations about assessment for learning and became refined, and we've sort of moved the conversation on to a much richer level of thinking about that. But that's unique, I think, to have major figureheads in education, as I say, in direct conversation with a classroom teacher is extraordinary, really.
It's great to see big venues that are absolutely packed because you're seeing the biggest names in education, but it's also brilliant to see a smaller classroom that might have 10 people in it, but they have a niche interest that they're massively passionate about, and this is the one place they can connect face to face with other people who are really into that. So everybody takes away something from it, and we're really keen that it feels like a festival. It's not a conference, it's not a CPD day that is in a hotel basement somewhere. The idea is that you should come and make it feel like it's a big day out. It's like a book festival, a music festival. It's something to look forward to, it's something to enjoy. We start with stand-up comedy, we end with stand-up comedy, and everything in between. It's going to make you smile, it's going to make you cry, possibly. There's all sorts of things going to happen. But expect anything. That's the joy of it. Yeah.
No fights this year, though, boys.
No.
I haven't seen enough of him, to be honest. So, yeah,
it's not over yet. Keep that up, and it'll happen.
I can sit between you. Don't worry. There was famously one a few years ago, wasn't there? Where a difference of opinion. I think related to that, you talked about the fact that the conversations carry on social media, and the nature of Twitter is you can't have a particularly balanced conversation 140 characters, so that tends to lead to a perception of a bit of a binary system in terms of people's views of education, and this helps to open that up, and you have a much richer conversation and a richer dialogue about it.
And it's also the idea that you get the chief inspector of Ofsted, the Secretary of State for Education, and not just policymakers, but academics who've influenced education, debating things. I mean, I'll give you another good example is, in education, one of the most contentious things are things like grading lesson observations. So this was something that was started to become a contentious point for teachers and people in schools, and people started to question that. And a lot of the debate was framed initially on social media, and you kind of start to see this weird thing happening where it's like a wave where all these people have this discussion about a particular topic in education, and then it'll get to the festival and there'll be this sort of debate or talk or something will occur, and it's at its best, it's a platform for that kind of debate and that kind of discussion. And I think I really echo what you were saying, Ian, because I think I came here initially as someone who didn't work at Wellington, and thought, wow, and then I started to work at Wellington, and I think that what we get out of it is far better than your average sort of punter. But there's certainly been it'd be interesting to kind of collate events at the festival over the years, like seminal events where these things happen. And I can remember Michael Gove being here a few years ago at a particularly sort of contentious point when he was Secretary of State, and people were thinking, there's no way that he's going to come to Wellington. He's there was real pressure at the time, and he didn't have to come here, but he did. And
an hour late.
Yeah, he did. Well, he came here, and it was a sort of almost like a shooting range where teachers were just sort of firing questions at him. But what an incredible thing that a teacher who's got a primary teacher from Newcastle can come here and stand up and ask the Secretary of State for Education, why are you doing this, or why are you doing that?
There's a lot of accountability, right? I think that's great. All the people who really do the most to shape education in the UK appear here year on year, and it's an opportunity for classroom teachers to get right in front of them, right in their face if they want to, and say, why are you doing this? Yeah, and I've got a better way of doing it, why don't you listen? So it is putting the people that make the decisions in the same room as the people who have to live with those decisions. I think that's one of the best things about the festival, and it's terrific.
Also gives a bunch of people like us a chance to pontificate.
Come on, Sofa.
Thank you very much, boys.
Thank you.